and welcome everyone. It is October 9th, 2024 at 5:31 p.m. This is a meeting of the Communication and Policy Committee. With me tonight are committee members Barb Higgins, Liz Boucher, and Jim Richards. Also from the district, we have Kathleen Murphy, Matt Cashman, and Karen Fisher-Anderson. Tonight on the agenda, we are revisiting a policy we've already been working on, Policy 741, use of facilities. And then we have two new policies before us tonight in draft form, Policy 753 regarding tobacco products and Policy 641 regarding class size. I see that Kathleen has something
Could
to
I
add.
speak to the class size one?
Yeah, go for it.
Really appreciated all the work that the Instructional Committee and Policy Committee did to look at class size. I'm asking if we could table class size tonight, and because I'm still working on the impact of it, when you look at the ranges that have been proposed, and as those ranges relate to the actual numbers that we currently have in our buildings, it puts us in a very precarious situation. Now, this would probably go into effect next year. We couldn't do it now because if I was over the range, I'd have to put a teacher in there, and I would not recommend that children be moved from the teacher that they started with and bonded with and all their classmates. That's really important to the work we do. So, given the range, given the current class sizes, I would ask that it be tabled. I certainly think it's a budget item when we go to budget in February to address.
Didn't we put language in there, though, that it would be starting numbers and that, mid-year and all this, if changes came, we'd, have leeway to leave teachers with, kids where they were?
We may have discussed that, but I don't think that language
is in there,
okay. And so
because this came up, like, what do we
Right,
do?
Barb. I agree with you on this.
We had a conversation where,
And it's not in the
what if it's
draft.
November and suddenly, we're three
Right.
kids over here, and what do we do? And nothing, because we started off right where we said we were, and we budgeted for these numbers, and then we wouldn't want to split up classes in November or
Right,
December.
I would not ever be that position. And the other problem is that some of the solutions to overage in class size would be
Teaching assistants that we don't have.
assistants, which frankly, I still have not been able to fill all of the positions. We've done a better job this year, but we're still behind in filling those positions. So I guess I'm asking if we could table that and let me do some more work on it. And
Right.
if that's
To
okay.
Barb's point, that language didn't make the.
So I'll work on some
Policy.
additional language that allows us some flexibility.
Well, and if real numbers indicate that our projections are off and we need to alter what we came up with, real data is always helpful in that regard.
Right,
Like,
right.
this sounds great, but here's the reality. What do we do?
When the policy was developed in 1983, I'm looking from my seat right now to see what they did in '83. They did a really good job. This policy has held through a lot of reviews. I think Barb and Jim would both be able to concur with that, but it's held strong throughout.
It was ahead of its time.
I do think so, and when we looked, as you know, we did look at other school districts to see, were we off, were we out of whack? And of course, we weren't. This policy that was developed in '83 really held,
So does anybody else have any questions or concerns or comments about that before I ask a couple questions?
No.
So I just want to summarize very quickly where we're at with this, which is that a concern came up about, it's been a while since we've reviewed class sizes. Is it time to do so? We had a joint committee of instructional and policy and had an excellent discussion around class sizes, from which came at least part of the proposal that we see here tonight. It sounds like there's some more language that needs to be added. Your suggestion is that we hold off on the discussion until later, but still in this year?
I mean, that was the intent of that joint committee, so I would want to follow that recommendation,
Okay.
but
But to your point, because we wouldn't even implement it until the next school year
Right.
anyway,
It gives
we
us some time
have
to really look
a
at
little bit
it.
of time.
Right.
So my question is, because it is a budgetary consideration, not having the budget impact of the draft policy, how can we be guided in our policymaking at any point this year if we don't also have sort of numbers to go with it? Does that make sense?
Right.
Would it be
So-
something like an interesting conversation to have around budget time?
Yeah,
Well-
we would need numbers.
Yeah.
Right, what I would do is give you an analysis of where the policy, as it was recommended, the impact it has on our current, and be able to share that.
Great.
So
So
that you
when the
have
draft, when we
data.
do
Yes.
meet to and
Right.
with the full, complete first draft, we'll also have a financial analysis
Exactly.
of the impact. Okay.
I mean,
Then I'm more
clearly,
than
that's,
happy to table.
you know, one teacher is, as you know, from your budget, you know the number, it probably will change this year because we have new contract numbers and we have additional support, like health insurance and all that has to be put in, all of our benefits, so it's going to change. That number changes when you put a new position in. Do you remember that in the budget last year? I believe it was 117,000.
Right. And I think we're all very aware, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jim.
No, I was just going to say, when you do that, and since Mr. Cashman is here, and I would also be very interested in the number of rooms we have available in all of our elementary schools, because I know that some of them are using pretty much every available space right now, so that if you add a classroom, that's not only a teacher, it's physical space. So I'd like some guideline or insight in that as well when we go to, because we'll have to talk about that when we make this
Yeah,
decision.
thank you, because that was the other piece of this, that when I went out to a couple of the elementary schools, and as I do my walkthroughs and looking and examining, I didn't have, in a couple of the buildings, I don't have additional rooms without taking something away that I needed. So I clearly think, we've wanted to have a preschool program, right, over at Krista. But every time I try to make the move to try to do that and, bring some kids back from Beaver Meadow, because they're Krista kids that are out there, I can't do it because all the classrooms are filled. So I need to work with the principals, identify those rooms. Matt will be a big help for me. Thank you, Jim, for bringing that up.
It comes to mind because when I was at back-to-school night in Beaver Meadow, they have 3 preschool classrooms this year, which
Right.
is more. And if we had to add another or 2 elementary school classes, we would have to discontinue that preschool classes. They would have to be, because you'd have nowhere to move them. You can't put them in the playground and you can't put them
Right,
anywhere.
and I can't move them back to where their homeschool is because
there's
their homeschool didn't have any room.
Yeah.
So
Well, we may or may not, and I'm not going to prejudge that. That's why I'd like the analysis.
Okay,
Right.
I will have that for you.
That's
Okay.
great. I think
I'll
it's
work with-
really important that in public we discuss, these are just, it seems like it's a shift of 1 or 2,
Yeah, it
numbers
wasn't
here and
significant.
there. But it actually has such
balloon
a
effect,
ripple
yeah,
effect
big
in
time.
the district, and I think people need to know the budgetary implications, the facility implications of changing something
Yep.
that's been longstanding.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So with that, I'd make a motion to table the discussion on policy 641 class size,
I'll second
since it's
that.
on the agenda, but we don't really vote on the agenda, so I don't know, do you need a motion?
I mean, we can.
We don't have to. We could just change
Made by
it.
Jim Richards, seconded by Barb Higgins. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes.
Yeah.
Policy 641 is tabled until further notice. All right, on to 741, facility use fees. It looks like what we have in front of us is 3 copies. We have the original policy 741 with no markings, and then we have 2 draft copies. Both of the draft copies are exactly the same. One has comments in the margin and one does not. So we can either work from the one that has comments or the one that doesn't. I had just put some comments in the margin for the staff, just to let them know why we made the further changes that we made. So we can just work from that, if you don't mind the smaller text.
No, I'd like to work for that one
Okay,
personally.
great. So everything that you see in red is changes we've made up until the last meeting. Anything highlighted in yellow are continued changes that were decided at the last committee meeting and we're now reviewing tonight. The first one is in the introduction and purpose. We had wanted to sort of broaden the language to make it a little more specific. In fact, we probably could have gone back to the original language, to the school community. I think it had gotten a little too specific for, I forget the term now, but we just needed to make it a little more broad, so it now says the community at large.
Affiliated was the term we used, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then,
It was.
but what does
Oh, yeah,
affiliated
that's for
actually mean?
definitions. This was just for the very first sentence
Oh,
in
okay.
introduction and purpose. We just tweaked that first sentence a little bit. Then in definitions, we now have what was affiliated group. Per Karen's recommendation, we changed that term to something else. It's been changed to associated group and civic group. So we've actually created two definitions out of the previous one. The reason we did that is we've had continued confusion over what the role of the PTOs and booster clubs have in this process. That they are not quite the same as the Boys and Girls Club or outside organizations that are using the facilities. So how do we carve out something for them? Because everything they do is in the service of the school.
Right.
They are a nonprofit, and they are charging at events. But the money that they make is going back to students, families, and to the school.
And
So
programs.
and
Sa-
what?
And programs.
And programs.
Saves us money.
Absolutely. So what we're trying out tonight and what we can discuss is if we like these two new definitions. One, associated group means a group whose primary purpose is to support the students, staff, and families of the district through activities and fundraising, including parent-teacher organizations or associations, and booster clubs. And now we've changed what was affiliated group to civic group, which is the same definition as last time, except now we've added local faith-based organizations to the list because Karen let us know that some churches use the facilities and get that waiver. So we've just looped them in. Do we have any comments so far?
Well, it's including but not limited to. I was just wondering whether you need to say local faith-based organizations or local community organizations, as opposed to that if it's not faith-based, would we say no? And how do we how do we limit that? I just like broader better than narrow on that one. I don't have a problem with it because I don't have
Well,
stand
it says included but
stand
not
on it.
limited to. So I
Yes,
don't-
included but
right.
not limited to. So
Which
you
is,
Right.
so that
So
means
it's,
other things could be there.
that list can be as long as we want to make it or as short as we want to make it.
Right, and I think that we had been borrowing from the existing policy of listing out the organizations that we're talking about. So it provides context, but we don't need the list to be exhaustive because we have that.
And if you're not in the list, it doesn't mean you can't rent the facility.
Exactly. So whether or not we want to add that is totally up to us. Having it removed doesn't mean churches are no longer eligible. It just means that they fall into the but not limited to
Right.
category. Up to you guys. We can come back to that.
That makes a good delineation, I think. I like it.
You like it? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. On to page 2. B, we've just clarified rental and related use fees because we've expanded the number of fees. And then in Pren 2, a facility rental fee may be waived for the following situations. A, activities sponsored by the district or civic groups, provided that no event fees are charged to participants. And now a new B, activities sponsored by associated groups. So what we've done is we've split it into two because associated groups can charge for event fees, but civic groups cannot. Does that make sense?
Right.
Because that is where it was a sticky point before, because as Liz pointed out, they charge for dances, other, like, I don't know, mums fundraisers, and so that in the previous language would have made them ineligible for that waiver. And so now we have acknowledged that they are being treated separately than civic groups,
Right.
because civic groups can't charge, but like a booster club can
Right.
for a tournament. Is everybody okay with that change?
So as long as a civic group does not have a fee to use.
So they can receive a rental fee waiver so long as they don't charge for their event.
But
That
if
it-
they have donations, that doesn't count as a charge.
I don't think so.
I don't
It's
think
not
so.
an entry fee.
No, I don't
Because you
think so
can come
either.
in even if you don't make a donation.
Right.
You mean donations to get in? Or do you
You
mean
know,
donations to
there's a
support the
different,
event?
different ways where you
Yeah,
have an event
exactly.
that isn't charging anything.
Yeah.
However, we'll be accepting a $7 donation for everyone who is, over 18, and, that,
Yeah.
We can't police everyone.
we can't do that. But I don't have a problem with this wording.
Okay.
Trying to follow that would be tough.
How, Matt, you haven't had a chance to weigh in on this new sort of splitting up the two groups. How are you feeling about it?
I think it brings clarity
Okay.
to it, and I think that will help us in the future.
Great. Very good.
Takes it off you having to explain it, or whoever's making the,
I mean,
You know,
it-
coordinating the
I
rental.
think the clarity piece,
Yeah.
and defining it,
Oh, yeah.
helps everybody
Yeah.
understand so that it's fair.
Okay, great. Moving down to number 6, you'll see facilities user is highlighted. This is just reminding everybody that we didn't like the term renter being used throughout because not everybody's a renter. So now we're either going to be using facilities user, group, renter as needed. So I'm just flagging all those places where we changed that. Number 7, we now have, I'll read it. The superintendent or their designee may waive or reduce rental fees, custodial fees, or setup fees for good cause due to extenuating circumstances consistent with the intent of this policy. The certificate of liability and damage fees shall not be waived. So this was a choice we made to give the superintendent more discretion on what she,
like the
what
funeral.
like the funeral.
Yeah, no, these things happen a lot though, or like a family's in need and it's a spontaneous fundraiser.
Yep.
These kinds of things.
But in that case, the certificate of liability and damage fees will not be waived.
Right.
Right, so
Yeah, so if
some,
something happened,
Yeah, it's
Responsibilities.
Insurance.
Yeah.
Insurance that in case any damage is done.
okay, all right, moving on. Section C, there's really no real changes other than we've switched things from what had said renter before to renter or group.
yep.
We just added our group. I did want to make note in number 2, I did add the word non-school, just to be consistent, because we've been splitting up school activities and non-school activities, so I wanted to be clear on that. And then we have a new 7 in this section. A copy of this policy shall be provided to all renters and groups when they reserve a district facility for a school or non-school event. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody was going to get this policy.
That's awesome. That's an important piece.
Yep.
It's, okay. But here we use renters. Are we okay with using renters?
Renters and groups.
Okay.
We don't want to say users to be consistent with
To
all
all,
users.
to all users. Yep.
Yeah, I was just looking to be consistent.
Where are you?
In number 7,
Seven.
C7, a
Yeah.
copy of this policy shall be provided to all renters and groups. And I
But
can
that would be for the same for all of these then. If a user is unable to access the online form, the user
I
shall be
know.
responsible.
I went back and forth. I had originally said user for all of these, and it sounds like I'm a robot. Like, it sounds really weird. So I just flipped it to renter or group. Like, if a user is unable to access the online form, it's like, I don't know. It doesn't sound like
Isn't
a
that what policy
person
is?
is
It's robot.
robot language. I mean, it is. It is.
I was trying to follow you, Kara.
I know.
terms of
I was
consistency.
trying to
Well,
like
in
give it a
your-
little.
In it, like, so it's gonna sound it to you because you've been looking at it,
Yeah.
When I pick it up and read it, that might not look that bad to me.
Right. So if you guys want, anytime it says renter or group, I can replace it with user. Is that,
I think we should be consistent.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do that, then we'll change the other one. I was trying to cut down on words.
you're trying to cut down on
Let's
where?
add some more in.
Short in the
We need some
policy.
commas
We
and
went to
semicolons.
We went to user, remember, because not everyone is quote-unquote renting.
Right.
Or a group.
Right. You associate payment of the facility with the word renter, so I think that's why we struggled with it
Yeah.
last
Right.
time.
And then it just felt weird because we had done renter or group was the original intention. And then we went to user to make it more simple, but user just sounded so weirdly
About-
formal.
On the, but on the
Yeah.
prior
Remember
page, you
user.
used facilities user.
I know.
So I agree, we should just be consistent on how.
Do you want to call them users or facility users?
Just users.
Just
Let's
users.
shorten this.
Just users.
Get
Users
words
of
out of here.
anything. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Same thing for D1, all users using district facilities.
All users of?
Users of. Okay, and then I just cleaned up number 2 a little bit. On school days, facilities are accessible for setup. Continuing on to page 4. All the same thing, users and groups and renters, so I will switch all of those to users. Okay. Now we get to, we're on page 5, number 2, under F, prohibited conduct. The prior draft had firearms and weapons are not permitted on school property. Karen let us know that due to some recent legislation that we needed to refine this language a little further. I've included her language here. She's suggested students are prohibited from possessing weapons or firearms on school property. Adults are requested to leave firearms at home or locked in their vehicles while on school property where they cannot be seen. Law enforcement will be notified of any individual possessing a firearm or weapon on school property who uses it in a threatening, harassing, or intimidating manner. Karen, did you want to speak to that a little bit more?
Sure. The reason I brought up that change is there was a recent legislative House Bill 1336, and it really spoke specifically to allowing.
Karen, get that mic in front of you.
It spoke specifically to allowing employees, to be allowed to leave property, weapons of this sort locked in their car, firearm or ammunition, as long as it's not visible. That's where that came from. So I thought that the language here was a little too restrictive because clearly, and this speaks to the fact you can have it on school property because our parking is on school property. I also went back to our old weapons policy, 544, and I was looking at some of the language there, and it's consistent with, weapons not being permitted in school buildings, on school property, in school vehicles as school-sponsored activity, which has now changed if you look at this new legislative bill. And then it says the policy applies to students and members of the public alike, so that's where I kind of split them up. Student violations of the policy will result in disciplinary action and notification. But then the next line is the one, it says members of the public who violate this policy may be reported to local law enforcement authorities if possession of the weapon is used in a threatening, harassing, or intimidating manner. So I wanted to stay consistent with that language because we can ask, I think we should be polite. Please leave your weapons at home. And then, like we had happen, if somebody walks in and has one, we say, please take it out and put it in your car and lock it in a place that cannot be seen. However, if they walk into school with a weapon and they're using it as a harassing, intimidating, or threatening manner, I would say we call the police. We put them on notice. So that seems fair, it's transparent, and it puts them on notice.
Do you have the bill language?
I have, here's the legislative language, and then here's no, it's not that one. And then this is the old weapons policy. Was that what you were referring to? Kate?
Yeah, I just wanted, what passed this year. There we go.
That's the first one I think I gave you.
Okay.
But that pertains to mostly employees, but certainly they're members of the public.
Okay, so while I read this, I know that Liz had some alternative versions to your alternative version, and I want to give her some space to make some suggestions.
I had put in the comments under where Cara had made this comment too, because I didn't know the correct way to do this. I am suggesting that a statement like this be added to it, consistent with the Board of Education resolution on gun-free school zone. Concord School Board of Education recommends the enforcement of federal gun-free school zones, and then have an alternate statement. Another suggestion is, which I would request that we add, is if we're going to keep a sentence that says adults are requested, right, that second sentence, if we're going to keep that, I would request that the language be something similar to or the same as adults are requested to securely store firearms on personal property unseen by others. personal property could mean their vehicle, but to securely store and use that language. We're requesting, we are only requesting.
Sure.
KFA. Law enforcement will be notified of any individual possessing a firearm or weapon on school property who uses it in a threatening, harassing, or intimidating manner.
I do believe, though, New Hampshire has an open carry
They do.
law, though.
All
So
she's
that
doing
language
though
you're
is
saying
she's,
is-
I think we all recognize that, we know that, and that's why this is being developed. All we're saying is we request it, and this will be handed to everyone, right, as part of their application. So it clearly states the position of the board based on their resolution, but this is what will follow.
I don't think we need to say anything specific about home or vehicle. It's just their personal property. Like, I would hope that it was secured on
But my personal
themselves.
property could be my briefcase. And I'm walking in there with that
and-
weapon in my briefcase, that,
Yep.
is that any different than carrying it in my breast pocket?
No.
No,
I
and you're
think
allowed
it's-
to do either.
I would like to see the language securely stored firearms. Request that you securely store your firearm.
Liz, would you mind repeating what you said before, just so I can hear it a second time?
Yes, so a suggestion here is that if we use a statement like adults are requested to, that the language be changed to adults are requested to securely store firearms on personal property unseen by others. We're just requesting, but that it's encouraging the secure storage of firearms. As adults, this is our responsibility to securely store firearms as the #1 killer of youth. And as a school district, I think we need to make that clear.
So to balance out what other people were saying, would you be okay if adults are requested to securely store firearms at home or locked in their vehicles while on school property? Would that be okay for you?
If to make a compromise, yes. I mean, I would prefer that we just don't say vehicle or home, right?
The problem is, the
Because
thing
now
is,
we're now we're like
Telling them that they
insinuating
can't, sort of, yeah.
well, the thing is though, is if I'm a gun owner, and I am, although I don't carry, right?
Check you out.
Yeah, no, I do not carry, but I do have, I will say I have a hunting rifle at home. If I'm reading this and it says to securely store it in my personal property, then my backpack is my first thing that pops in my mind.
But is it securely stored in there? It's not technically securely stored.
So what does that mean? Like, can it have ammunition in it?
No. Securely stored by definition
Is
that
what?
ammunition is separate from the weapon.
Yeah.
It's in a
And then
locked
it's in a
case.
locked case.
I think you'd have to define that. then.
Right. So,
Yeah, because I don't know what that means.
right.
To
If we're
me, it
gonna
just means
if we're gonna
outside.
use that terminology,
Yeah.
we're gonna need to define
I'll
it.
go back to the briefcase. I have a briefcase that
It's
has a
locked.
lock on it.
No, I have to be honest,
And
as,
that's,
as a non-gun owner, but a family of gun owners, if it was a gun in a case and ammunition in a case and they were in something else and I couldn't see them, I don't have a problem with that. I wouldn't know it was there, you know.
I mean, none of us are
That's-
gonna know. The
right.
point being, even if someone came in with, if they have the right to carry
Mm-hmm.
into a facility, they can come into the facility as long as they're not brandishing it in a subjective, these are
we
subjective
put-
words we're using, threatening, harassing, or intimidating manner.
Yeah, we're only requesting, so.
Right.
yeah, so I guess I'm okay with
I
that.
mean, my thought here is that to
I-
use the word securely store is to promote safe storage of firearms, as it's the leading cause of children's death.
Can we
No, I'm-
preface
I'm
it with
good
why we
your
would
securely
prefer,
stored words.
can we not preface it with why we would prefer firearms not be on school property whatsoever? If you're inclined to do so, it must be securely, then put that language,
I would just say,
or is
Adults
that
are
too much
requested to
language?
securely
students are
store.
prohibited from possessing weapons or firearms on school property. Adults are requested to securely store firearms on, what words we use, on personal property unseen by others.
Yeah, I think that's probably okay.
I'm okay. I like the
Yeah.
securely stored myself. I think that
One more
has
Would
a
most
little
gun owners
little
know
more
what that
oomph in
means?
it. Oh, yeah, most gun owners are gonna, most of the
should,
gun
as
owners are
we-
gonna,
we-
owners they securely store it. They know. It's only
We
those
have
few
no
that don't.
secure gun storage laws in our state
Mm-hmm.
either.
So
You
I,
do not?
We do not.
I think I'm happy with adding language. I think if we're going to start adding more language to this, that it may deserve its own section, or at least like 2A, B, C, like however we're going to lay it out so that it's very clear what we're asking.
Because I know when we
people.
had this situation before, the person that had the gun was only too happy to go put it away, right? There was never not a, oh, I totally get it, I'm sorry. So I would think most people coming to an event at a school would understand this is a school. And if somebody was being irritating about it, well, then that's a call to law enforcement, So I think that makes it very, very clear that if it's seen, it's not securely stored. And yes, we have an open carry law, but this is a school and this is what we request.
So,
Right.
Liz, would you read that one more time so I can make sure I have the right?
Well, I was going to say, we'll probably need to type it up.
Yeah.
Okay, it's on here. It's on the draft. Do you want me? I'll read it
You
again.
can read it, adults.
Okay.
Well, but hold on, because
You have other-
before we start writing things down, there's a couple of things I want to bring up. One, the last time we talked about this, we acknowledged that some students are adults
They are.
and some students are not necessarily from our district. So it got complicated when we used generic terms like students and adults. I'm also curious, Karen, to me, this language I'm not sure how this language from House Bill 1336 impacts this facilities user policy, because it says us as an employer cannot prohibit an employee from storing a firearm in the employee's vehicle. We're not really talking about employees, we're talking about people using our facilities.
Right, people
Well,
are showing
there
up.
could be employees,
So that's a separate policy.
Oh, I hope
An
not.
employee
An employee
policy.
policy would cover the employee no matter what they were doing if it was a school event. It wouldn't be now a different policy because
But
I'm not in my
based on
classroom,
this
I'm in the
is what
gym.
Kara's-
Yeah.
It's the same, you're
But
still an
yeah, and that's why I
employee.
said it only pertains to employees on a school, but the logical extension, I mean, if you look at New Hampshire law, is, it's much more liberal. We're gonna request and we can ask and all that kind of stuff, but my concern all along has been if we put it in the policy, and I think it's a great idea to do something, you're not going to be able to enforce it if you're challenged by,
So,
under
okay.
state law right now.
Well, then,
So-
explain to me, just for clarification, because the last time we discussed this, we came up with the statement, firearms and weapons are not permitted on school property.
Right.
I asked, is that legally,
Right.
are we allowed to draft that language? And
Right.
you said, yeah.
And then.
And now we have just an additional piece of legislation that pertains to employees specifically storing firearms in their car, and now all of a sudden, we need all of these caveats.
Right.
So I'm just curious why we have to make all these changes, why we can't stay with the original language, firearms and weapons are not permitted on school property, semicolon.
When you asked me that question, Kara, it was in the spring, and that just got passed in July.
Right, but I'm just saying, this doesn't seem to really be directly relevant to this policy. So going from a short, easy statement about things not being allowed on school property to now we've got to talk about students, adults, and
Employees?
employees.
Yeah.
Can I ask that we get a legal interpretation on this? Because I'm not sure as a public building if we can prohibit.
I'm gonna get, I
Firearms
can
and
tell you
weapons?
right now where we're gonna get. They're gonna tell us that
We can't
you can say that,
Oh,
but
you
we
can't.
can't enforce it.
But we can say it.
We can say
Can
it,
say it.
just know that we can't enforce it.
Based on federal law, but we might not be able to say it based on state law, right?
Right.
And,
We
yeah,
can
'cause-
say it, but we can't enforce it.
Right, and then
But
Governor
saying it puts it
Sununu.
out there.
I'm sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just
Okay.
said saying it puts it out there, so when somebody, so if you have an event that might have a lot of people that have guns that wanna bring them, maybe they won't rent a school for it. You know what I mean? Like, if this is part of what we're hoping in our renters, then,
But reading it, no, just being the devil's advocate on this one and having read the paper of recent events at various school activities, there are people who will challenge that just for the sake of
yeah,
challenging.
yeah, true.
So that someone or a group may come with open carry and walk onto it just to
No,
challenge
then
this
if they want to be
policy.
threatening, harassing, and intimidating, then
And
that's
they,
against
by
policy.
wearing a visible firearm that is legal, they are not harassing, intimidating, or doing it. The moment they touch that or allude to that or infer a threat from that, that is something you can do.
Though it's subjective.
Yeah.
It might be intimidating to me, but
Right.
not to you.
All right, and that's what
Yes.
happened.
It might be
And that's-
traumatic for me.
But the current law is such that it's not, that's not considered threatening. I deal with this every day, so I just know. It's like, you can walk into any one of my outlets or one of my workplaces and there's nothing anybody can say. And I think that's.
But it's not a school.
But it's not a school. So that's why I defer to people who know the law of schools.
Same with other protests on.
Yeah.
We've had
Same with
people
law of
walk
schools.
into our schools with weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And the principals, if it's visible, principals has just asked them if they could take the weapon and put it in their car. And for the only purposes of the anxiety that it creates amongst
Kids.
students
Okay,
and staff.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think we can, and I'm all in favor of us asking to do that. I'm questioning, the question that comes at us, if they say no, then they walk through, right?
That's right. They have to
Okay,
walk
that's fine.
through. Yeah.
Then we're not in
Yeah.
violation of anything, we don't need legal. But
We are
I'm
just
all in
saying
favor
that
of
it's not
saying, don't
permitted.
do it, because it's not a good thing
Right,
for kids.
right.
And
But I-
Cara, to your point about the employee piece of it, I mean, clearly, employees don't have any greater rights than the general public. So I looked at that as guidance. There's another one out there, House Bill 1178, and that's where Governor Sununu, this one came out in 2022, I guess it was, where he vetoed a bill on trying to forbid weapons, firearms on school property. So,
That's
you
why
know,
we
let's
have a school
ask,
board
let's
resolution.
hope.
Right. And that's the thing, I mean, I fully acknowledge that the safe schools, law conflicts with state law.
Yeah.
We have to draft a policy that, sort of bridges that inconsistency. I'm just not sure, as a committee, do we want to keep it short and sweet and just, leave it at that? We just don't think they're permitted, or maybe we make a statement about secure storage or safe school zones and leave it at that. Or if we are going to start qualifying it, we are going to need to have a more formal, here's, we need to explain what a student is, what an adult is, what securely stored is. So we either need to get more in the weeds or less in the weeds.
How is federal law different?
Federal law does not allow for guns to be on the school zone, in a school
So
zone.
wouldn't following federal law preclude following state law in a policy?
That is the argument.
That's
Right.
It's what
Governor
has
Sununu.
been argued about
That is
quite a
exactly
bit.
what.
Quite a bit.
what-
That's what this is about.
Well, I just say we put what we want in there and keep your damn guns at home, and that's how we feel.
And I think to Barb, you made a good point, and I agree with this. The least amount of additional words that are there makes people not even question it. Maybe
Right.
people would say, oh, firearms and weapons are not permitted.
Yeah.
They
okay,
just leave it at home.
Right, right.
They don't say, oh, well, I could bring it, but I could put it in
I-
my vehicle.
And
Yeah, let's not give them a list of possibilities. Let's just say,
I agree with, I think with shorter, straight to the point, historically, federal law supersedes state law in most things, although there's a lot of, I will leave that argument to a different group of people on a different day. I
Right.
think we should just put in that we say it's not permitted on school property. If someone wants to disagree or challenge us,
we
let
take that
them.
as it comes.
Let
This
them.
is our policy. Complying with safe schools, federal law.
Right. This
Yeah.
is our school policy. Nobody is bound and held, and we're not going to throw them in school detention if they violate our policy. We would just notify somebody else. So I think that's fine.
You have a lot of policies like that.
Yes,
I mean,
we
You
do.
have policies last week that you approved in finance, or you've done some first reads. You don't, when people don't pay for their lunches, you have this policy that says this is what we want to happen, but then there is a point where there's nothing you can really do.
Right.
Your hands are tied and you're not going to court. You made that very clear. I think that you can take a position knowing full well that there is opposing legislation.
I'm in favor of short and sweet number 2.
Yeah, same here.
Okay. Liz, how are you feeling about it?
Yes, short and
Yes?
sweet.
Short and sweet? Okay, so
So alternative is gone.
I'd say for now, alternate is gone. Firearms and weapons are not permitted on school property wins the day in committee.
Okay.
I think we also, when we bring it to the full board for first reading, we should acknowledge
That we're following federal law.
that we're doing that.
Let's set that
If
precedent.
somebody
And
wants to
then when
have
it comes to employees, right, you deal with that on an
Yeah,
employee
that's different.
basis,
Right.
as you see appropriate within both the law and the direction of the school board, so, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And if we need to be more clear or add additional language in the firearms and weapons policy,
Then
we
we,
can look at that.
Right, like that's where I think we can get
Yeah.
deep
And
into
then that can always be
definitions.
supplemental to this, should the user request more information on that.
Yep.
but I do like your language of secure. I think
I know.
that speaks to responsible citizenship,
Right.
which we all should kind of agree that people need to be responsible
It's a
citizens.
great message across the board, not just in schools, but
Yeah,
everywhere.
overall.
Guns should be in secure places.
All right. With that, knowing that we have some minor amendments, we're removing the alternate version of 2, and I'm making language consistent throughout the document to use the term user or facility user. Do I have a motion to move policy 741 to the full board for first reading?
So moved.
Can I just insert something
yeah.
real quick? Do you want to look at I hate to ask this question, but just to be sure it's consistent with what you want, Group A, Group B, Group C, are you happy that everything the groups have set up are identified
Yes,
on the
and
chart?
once we update terminology, the terminology needs to be consistent there as well.
Got it.
So this goes first, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, because that's not policy, that's just a sheet that you
Correct.
make based on
Yeah,
And we
policy.
can change, we update this every
Right,
year, but.
right, and we just wanted to make you aware that we had that.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
Thank you.
Definitions.
Yeah.
All right, so moved by Ms. Higgins. Do I have-
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Boucher, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, good job, everybody. We only have one more thing on the agenda tonight. We are looking at policy 753, tobacco products ban on use and possession in and on school facilities and grounds. This is the first time we are seeing this. Would anyone like to take the lead on the explanation?
I'll just jump in if I
Yeah,
can.
go
real
ahead,
Please,
Kim,
yeah.
Yeah,
start
just
while
real
I'm
quick.
dishing through my
What I
papers.
did was, I took a look at our existing policy, and I then pulled down the New Hampshire School Board Association sample policy that's also been provided to you. Hopefully, yeah, you all have copies of that. And then what you have in front of you is the language from the recommended New Hampshire School Board Association policy that's been inserted into, so the black language should be what's consistently, what was already in this current policy, and then the red language are the changes that have been recommended, okay? And if they're cross-outs, usually I crossed it out, I looked at this in March, so it's been a while, but when I crossed out a couple sentences, that's because they're in our old language, but it's not in the new language, but I've been asked not to just eliminate it, so that's why it still shows up.
Gotcha.
So,
So,
This is an important one to include. Please understand that we see, and it shows us from the principals that the vaping and so forth is more prevalent, and so needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
great. I will say the liquid nicotine definition. It looks like a little extra got stricken so there's some language.
as well as,
Liquid nicotine means any liquid product composed either in whole or in part of pure nicotine and propylene glycol and manufactured for use with e-cigarettes. And then the NHSBA recommendation definition still says, as well as any other product or item included in RSA 126K23A, period. So I don't know if we want to reincorporate that into the draft. Just to be consistent.
And also, E is capitalized in e-cigarette, but then not down in the other E's. Does that need to be capitalized, or
Was it only capitalized
in
at the
certain
start of the
areas.
sentence?
up here?
if
We use-
it's,
Oh, I
I think
see.
what we've done in the past is if it's capitalized in the definition section, I think we've capitalized it in the body, if I recall. Is that
Okay,
correct?
well, in this
Yeah.
case, it's capitalized in the
Or not?
introduction, not capitalized in the definitions.
I would say it would probably not be capitalized.
Yeah, I don't.
Except at the beginning of a sentence, obviously.
I would agree.
So I'm happy to make that change. I'm just circling all the spots.
The,
Okay.
I know this is with the legal thing, but I'd feel better with it even simplified. To me, device means any product composed of a mouthpiece, heating element, battery, electronic circuits designed. I'd just say, if it was me, and I know it's not, is any product designed or used to deliver any aerosolized or vaporized substance.
Yeah.
Does it, because if someone designs something that's composed of a mouthpiece and not a heating element, because now technology means we don't have to, you can heat it with your hand or so, or not a battery, if it has a solar, I mean, it just ties you such.
Right, to be
limits.
so specific
Be so
means
specific,
that
and
any
I-
exception becomes.
And I know
outside
that's
the-
why
Anything you use
the
to
way.
inhale crap.
Yeah, I know that's the way
There we go.
Right.
official things are sued, but I don't know why you wouldn't just say any product designed or used to deliver any aerosolized or vaporized substance.
They went word for word out of the.
I know they did.
You have RSA 126. Can I see
I know they
Yeah,
did
I see
because, and it's a law, but
Yeah, I got it.
Tim, you can complain about the legislature all you want. You're in a safe place.
yeah. I just,
But yeah,
I just like it simple, simpler and more inclusive than, so,
That's just because I
agree.
don't know what e-hookah is, or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they have to include all these things. Unfortunately, I feel like we're a little stuck when it comes to matching definitions to state statute.
I understand. I just was
glad
just
they're
voicing
in
my
here.
desire to simplify, but that's okay.
I do see in the statute, there is a definition of minor. Do we have any age issues with this policy? Do we need to make it explicit that this counts for 21-year-olds who are
Students.
We just say
Students.
student.
Yeah, student would preclude age. Same with the gun thing we were talking about. You know, you
Right.
have 22-year-olds, well, you're a student, which
Right.
means you follow the student rule.
But we don't allow.
We don't allow anybody
adults
to-
smoke.
Well, that's true, yeah.
And
that
you
just so
can,
doesn't-
it's a smoke-free zone, you don't have
Yeah, it
to
says
worry
right on the
about the
sign.
students, and it's
So
just like
it's
a.
regardless of
store.
age.
Correct.
Yeah.
So this goes beyond the statute. It's more restrictive than
Mm-hmm.
statute. Okay. Very good. Sorry, I keep taking all your papers.
And that's what you
No,
want.
no, no, that's fine.
Sure.
I brought it just in
Okay,
case.
be very
Thanks.
clear.
Yeah, I
That's
don't want
what you
anybody,
want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't
good.
want
Just
teachers
wanna
up
make
front
sure.
doing it, I don't want anybody else.
Yeah.
On occasion, you'll see people smoking at a game, you know, on athletic event, and I know that the principals have asked them to not smoke, and, you know,
Yeah,
The enforcement is challenging,
right,
just like.
it is challenging, but they do
Challenging
do
to
it.
very
They
well.
they do, mostly you see it at the high school, occasionally on middle school game, but the principals do
Like an
say something.
like outside?
Outside, yeah. The principals do say something.
Because people, you don't want to smoke
Yeah,
there.
right.
yeah, I understand we're outside, it's my right, but then you're right next to somebody else.
Yeah,
Right.
You can't really. have it
not the
go straight.
time for it. Not the time for it.
Karen, in D, the second paragraph in D.
Yep.
Were you trying to strike the building?
Yes,
Okay.
the, and then
Just
just go
the?
with building principles.
Okay, got it.
Where are you on D?
Under
Oh,
D.
just the second paragraph
Yeah.
in D.
Yeah.
I just want to,
Just
because
go with
it
building.
looked like buildings started to get stricken, so I
Just
just
the.
wanted to make sure.
Yeah, just the,
Okay.
sorry about that.
Nope, not a problem. I just want to make sure.
And then there was one other I caught just a little while ago on E, I think under e-cigarette, where the statute,
Where are you,
the definition,
e-cigarette?
go back, I'm sorry, go back
Yeah.
to page 1. The
Okay.
definition of e-cigarette.
Yeah,
And then it defines the RSA.
right.
The 126K2, it should be 2B, not A.
Room 2B.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
according to this go by with them, so.
Okay.
Because the next one is C, so I think that is correct. Device.
Well, if we're writing all those, then the device should
2A.
also be 2A.
Yeah.
Yep, 2A. For statute, e-cigarette B, e-liquid C, liquid nicotine. It's back to, is 3A. So we're good there. Okay.
Yeah, Karen, one is a regular numeral 2 and the other is a Roman numeral 2. Did you notice that? under device,
Yeah, that's probably just my typing.
yeah, so
is.
it
It's
should be
just-
126-K colon,
Two.
Roman numeral
Two.
2
No.
dash A, just like the rest of them.
They should all be 1-1, 1-1, 1-1,
Those are
and
Roman
no Roman
numerals.
numeral. I don't know if those are Roman numerals. When you look at the go-by, I don't know. Is
I
that
like
not a
them.
I
Roman
think they
numeral?
are, because liquid nicotine is 3. They're on.
Yeah,
That's
so
a
it is,
Roman
it
numeral.
is RSA 126-K colon 2, numeral 2,
Two.
comma, and then it's gonna be the Roman
Roman
numeral,
numeral
and then
two.
the subparagraph, letter.
It's a sub-designation of
Yeah.
K colon 2.
Yeah.
I promise.
So that is right, the
That
1-1.
is, so,
So
this would be right. It's the whole
Yeah.
thing.
Okay, got it. Okay, so it is.
But then
It is a Roman-
this would be needed.
Yeah, to be added
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
We're good?
Okay, I'll let Bridget learn about that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm happy to make these technical updates, because
Yeah,
what
will
I
you
was.
check on that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
What I'm gonna
Gotcha.
propose.
Yeah.
I mean, are we copying?
yeah, Karen, on that one too, that doesn't make sense, even what I said, because you got 2
Okay.
and nothing after it, but the others have 2 and then Roman numeral dash A or B or C, right?
Yeah, we got it.
I just want to make sure it's correct.
Yep, it's all, it is in here,
Yeah,
so.
Well, because this is current language, so it might just be.
yeah, I want to double
So
check
it might have
those.
been sloppy however many years ago. 2018. So I'm more than happy to do the technical updates. If the committee is amenable, I will also add numbers and letters so that definitions, so each definition has its
Has a
own number.
Thank you.
Just to keep everything consistent with what we're trying to do, which is to keep everything organized and able to be cited without having to say third paragraph down.
Yep.
How are we feeling about E, implementation and notice? Annual notice, that's appropriate. About the policy and consequences. What are the consequences? Do we have consequences?
If you're an
smoking?
employee,
Oh.
definitely.
Right, which may
Yeah,
include
and
prescribed
students.
consequences.
Yeah, if you get
Students.
caught. It's all outlined in our student code of conduct.
Okay,
For first offense, second offense, so on and so forth.
great.
If they vape, I think they get sent home.
Matt, what do we have for smoking and tobacco products and anything like that, and for signage? Do you recall?
We talked about that before. We received them from the Department of Education in 2018 or 2019. So they're posted at every school location close to the entries or on the building, so that we're making people aware
Okay,
when they
I've
come
seen
in.
it at the high school.
It is.
So-
Yep.
And drivers of school-owned vehicles or vehicles used for, school events and all are informed prior to either being certified to drive or having permission to drive, that they're not allowed to use things in school vehicles? Okay.
I got really confused when you just said, you mean like buses?
Buses,
Okay,
school
Yeah.
cars, vans.
like school-owned cars and vans. Okay, the way you were saying it, I was like, are you trying to get parents not to smoke on the way to dropping their kids off? 'Cause-
But if a
think we can
parent
tell
is
them.
driving someone to the wrestling match, that is, they're driving, in some.
So even if it's a
part of-
personal vehicle,
Well, that's the question I'm having, is what happens if we have, sometimes we don't have a bus, sometimes parents drive students
That's
to a
correct.
competition.
That's correct.
And I'm sending my kid with you, and you have all the windows rolled up and smoking because you can. Is that something we allow? I'm curious, I'm asking that question.
poor Karen.
That's out of our jurisdiction.
I don't know that we can regulate that or do
We
anything
don't know
from
what else is
that.
in that. We don't know what else they have in the back trunk
We-
of the car either.
Yeah.
Maybe they
that's-
got
I
a
would-
roadie,
Cigarettes.
Yeah,
Life is good.
You're absolutely right. I just want to know what.
They got their
And that may
gun.
be a different policy for a different day and a
Yep.
different discussion, but I'm just curious. It just crossed my mind in that
I can
we can do
control
it when we have people
vans
take
and
buses.
buses.
School
and,
vehicles, but somebody's
and,
personal cars.
Sorry,
is
you can't do
good.
anything
cars
about
driven
it.
by
We can only
teachers.
do what we can do.
We could
Okay.
ask the AD in his direction to parents, please.
Yeah, if
But
we
Yeah.
make
that's again,
statements like,
request.
it,
Curious.
it is prohibited to,
Prohibited,
you know?
so- Yeah, and I don't know
You
that that would
could say.
ever happen or wouldn't ever happen, but, I was just curious as to what happens when we designate people to drive people and it's not in a school vehicle, so, interesting.
So 18-year-old Barb remembering all my peers smoking in the smoking area with teachers at Concord High School. And then 25-year-old Barb coming back here to teach and not eating lunch in the teacher's room because it was like a smoky. And then 27-year-old Barb, when all the teachers go down to the custodian's room to smoke because they don't smoke in the teacher's room anymore. And then 30-year-old Barb, finally a smoke-free school. Like this conversation.
The evolution
Oh my gosh.
over the years.
I'm just sitting here like,
Pretty
oh,
amazing.
wow, I can't, wow. And there's so many more ways to smoke at school now.
I'm older than most of you here, and I
Older
do
than
remember
dirt.
being in high school and the teacher's lounge door would open.
Oh, and
There'd
the
be a
rush of smoke.
Big
Well, Concord
cloud
had a
of
smoking
smoke.
area. It was
Yeah,
walking into the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Everyone sat out there. Benches and,
Different times,
yeah.
but, okay.
Sure.
I think we're good.
Okay. I'm
think we're
fine
good.
with all of this. I think we're ready to move it to first reading if everyone is okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
With the amendments we discussed, technical and otherwise.
Do you want a motion?
Yes, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
So moved that we accept this policy
For first
for first reading.
Move to the full board for
Yep,
first
yep,
reading.
yep.
And I
Second.
second.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Who's it gonna be?
Give me Jim.
Give me Jim. We'll give him a turn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes.
Thank you. It's because Barb and I can remember
So
when
both
the
policies-
teachers and students used to smoke in schools a lot.
Both policies will be brought forth to the November board meeting as a first read.
Yes,
Thank you.
After you make a
amend
couple,
and
yeah.
hand them off.
Excellent.
Yes, you're just making basically technical amendments other than what we've talked about today.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Yep, no additional changes.
Thank you for that.
Kara, I just have to compliment you on your telephoto brain, because for all the money in the world, I couldn't look at this document and notice all those, I get the gestalt of it, like, don't bring your
Which is
guns to
why
school,
we
please,
need you,
keep your crap at
yes.
home, like, that I get. Yeah, so you're right, we're right where you need to be.
Thank you. I appreciate the
Absolutely.
technical
Yeah.
detail that
I'm a
you've
wide
put
angle.
into this.
Sarah
so.
doesn't have the policies that you just had, the smoking policy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I remember them all.
I'm like, I'm not
the
big
shift.
picture. I will definitely do the technical
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
and you
yeah.
can tell me about
Yeah.
how everybody used to smoke in the
Exactly.
teachers' lounge.
So, Madam Chair.
Yes, what else? What do you got for
I
us?
just wanted to update the committee that next, we did decide to have 2 meetings this month. The second meeting that we have, we will begin the deliberations on the Title IX policy, which is huge. And please understand that there are 6 other policies that are embedded in that Title IX that we need to address. So we will bring forth, and we will share with you what we have at this point, but I'd like to be able to start that process because I suspect it will take us some time.
Yeah.
And as you know, there's always controversy when with the Title IX.
Will that be the next meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
We'll see
Yeah.
him for the first time.
We'll see him for the
first time, but we're going to try to, we have, the Title IX policy is done.
Sooner rather than
We-
later. because
I sent it to Kara
it'd be
already.
nice if we could finish that,
Right, so.
because it might have a new
So just
committee.
know that that's on the
Right.
agenda.
Yes, and I'm excited that it's coming to us. I'm excited for a robust discussion of all the nuances of all the policies that are, I mean, these are sensitive topics, and I think this is a very professional space in which to discuss it. So I don't think it's going to be a problem for us. I will say that I will make sure that everybody has summary documents about the extensive changes to Title IX that the NHSBA have provided, the federal government have provided. They're around 20 pages each, so you can kind of get the gist. The full changes to Title IX is more than 1,000 pages with comments, so we will not be using that as a reference for our material. But we'll use what we've got to at least get us started. Does that sound good? Okay. In the meantime, is there anything else?
No, that's just an important policy, and the ones that go along with it are really important for our students.
Very familiar with
Yep.
CFRs. I used to work in
I'm looking forward to
And
getting
these
it done.
policies, as they affect students, will be put in student handbooks and posted appropriately.
Okay, great.
And will you let us know when that information is available?
I will make sure that's available to you guys by the end of the week. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. And then, so the draft that I've seen, in fact, I'm glad we're both here and it's reminding me. There's a draft that I've seen that has strikes and red text to replace. It's very extensive.
Right.
And I had made the offer, and the committee can push back on this if you want, rather than show it to us in that way, we could do what's called a repeal and a replace, where we essentially create new policies. It's all new language. We see all the language clean. And then we move forward with that policy, and then we repeal the former policy so that it's not all the
don't see all the
strikes. We don't see
strikes.
all the strikes and stuff. It's something we can do. We don't have to.
It makes sense to do it with this policy, given the length and the breadth of it, so that you're not always trying to go back to another policy that you had, and making sure that you captured that, what was in place, as it related to the new language. I would urge you to do that. If you're uncomfortable with something, then you can still design and rewrite in the way that you think will be more representational of Concord. You have that right to do that, but I think going forward with what's out there first, and not trying to use the old
Like
policy.
squeeze it back into the
it's
old
just-
policy.
it will-
That's what I'm
you'll-
worried about.
Essentially
Well, that's hard
because
with
the-
anything.
The changes are so extensive?
Yeah.
Okay, I would agree. Because when you have very, very extensive changes, it's pretty brutal to read through all the strike-throughs and then find, oh, that's the word that's not.
Right.
Right. And that's,
Changed.
with Title IX, especially reporting requirements, it's a lot of language, but maybe just a few things have been shifted around. And so to display that in draft form is difficult to follow.
And there's a whole section on the reporting, kind of the grievance process, if you will, and that's pretty extensive. And there wasn't really that many changes in that section, was it, Karen, when we looked at it?
No, not really.
So there's
It's
some
gotten-
pieces in it that will be very much like the one you had, and the process of grievance as we use.
The new policy, the 2024 edition, which stand by may just go away, depending on the election, if we get rid of the Department of Education. So maybe that'll cut our deliberation short.
Indeed. We'll just be in charge of
Is
everything
far
then.
less due process heavy as the one
As the
that's
former.
currently in existence. Our problem, right now is when we have a case come up, and I've got one right now, you have to look at when did the alleged sexual harassment occur and decide which edition do you use.
I'm
It's
sorry
just
for
'cause,
you.
I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like,
Well,
You're living in
we
two
use-
worlds, yeah.
We have to use the one we have.
No. Well, we will, even down the road, let's say 2 years from now, I've got a senior who comes forward and says, I was sexually harassed back in 2020. I can't use our new policy. I have to use
Well, you have
the
to use
old
what was in place.
Yeah.
That's,
at the
that's
time.
with anything in the
Yeah,
world.
it's-
Right.
So it's very, some districts, believe it or not, based on, I won't bore you to death, but some districts right now are having, because of some arguments and injunctions that have been issued, they've got two different sets, well, same with us, but just for how they're doing the policies for sexual harassment, period. It's craziness.
Well, that actually brings up an interesting point, which is would we even need a repeal and replace if we actually have two policies but effective dates that move forward and backward? Like this,
Well,
the
we
current
can't
policy.
We can't repeal it if we might have to use it for something. Does that make sense? Like, it's not in place
Interesting
now,
question.
but,
Right, so essentially it's two policies but with effective dates.
right.
If that really is something that you need to guide your process,
Yeah.
that's something to think about as well.
So do we say that this policy is effective this date and that all prior policies are no longer effective as of this time?
Right, for issues beyond this date, but if the occurrence was prior to the new policy,
Yeah.
the former policy's in place. Right, so,
Yeah, you
Well, that's
guys,
what she
you guys
just
think
said.
about that.
Think about how you do it.
I'm not good with that yet, so.
Yeah, okay, let us know.
I'm going to seek some advice, let Karen and I talk, I'm going to
Yeah, I
give Dean a call, because you can't be going back to 2020 or whatever when you have a case in 2028.
Right, the reporting requirements will have
just-
already
And it just
been-
would, yeah.
Right.
So I'm a little
Oh, yeah.
uncomfortable, so
This is
let
past
me,
the window.
that's a great question that
Yeah.
you brought up, so let's kind of look at that again and kind of toss
That's
that
your
around.
Title IX coordinator help.
Yeah, you-
Consult with- consult with
legalese,
legal.
word
You
salad.
let us
Let's
know
confuse
what
the
you
masses
need
so that
in
we can
terms
do what
of
we want. Yeah, but
documentation for your
Just when you
process.
read it, I know some people have said, do we really need all of this language? And according to the CFR, I mean, I swear I'm not trying to get, popular. You have to put specific people in the policy. So you're gonna see Karen Fisher Anderson in there because even if I
You have
leave
to be named,
mid-year,
yeah.
What?
you're gonna have to, you have to update the policy of
Finally.
that person. So
Okay.
it is mandated.
Yep.
It's just that notice, transparency.
Which will require, and it should say in the policy, that it will be reviewed annually, just like the data governance policy, which we have to bring forward, because it has to be done annually, right?
Maybe not everything has to be reviewed
But
annually.
this
Eleanor.
one may be just because there may be name changes.
Yeah.
Unless you put in something that says they can be changed by the superintendent, or the
Right.
superintendent designates, or something like that.
Right.
Because
Well,
you
we'll
do.
see. And that's where we will be looking for guidance from you guys, which is what is mandated, what is suggested, what should be an appendix versus the meat of the policy, you let us know. So,
Well, we have lots to look forward to.
indeed. Unless there's anything else, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. It is 7:36. We are adjourned.
6:36.
6:36. I said 7. That's crazy.